Geodesic. Bunny's eating the tag off the pillow. Okay, that's good. And I love the action. Friday. I just finished sewing my Geodesic Sweatshirt by Blueprints, and I am in love with the triangle piecing. And for my fabric utilization, I used a really nice organic French terry with fleece on the inside, so it's nice and cozy. And for my fabric colors, I referenced the color theory in terms of nice opposite colors on the chart for really high contrast, and I really love the end result. And since I already have the pieces printed out, I want to do this again, but I think I have an idea to make it in woven fabric and quilting it. This is the perfect base pattern for a quilted jacket. I have seen so many fabulous variations on social media. My Pinterest board is filled with them, but I've never sewn one before. Well, I kind of actually did, but I think I was cheating because I turned a duvet quilted blanket into a jacket. But now I want to try actually quilting myself. So I'm really excited to get started. I have all these organic cotton wovens and linens, really a beautiful selection. So I'm so excited to see how this is going to transform. What I love about PDF patterns is that they're printed out on this nice thick printer paper, so you can pin them again and again and sew them again, so you're not wasting more paper and you're really saving money reusing the same pattern over and over again. I can think of so many more things I could make with just these triangles and piecing. What I love about the technical drawings included is you can color in and envision what your sweatshirt's gonna look like. And I made the crop version here, but it's a bit oversized. This is size G8 that I made. So in my jacket, I want it a little bit more structured since my fabric isn't as draping. So what I did, the pattern has one triangle per size. And then I just went into the PDF and isolated the size EF and printed out just that. And I can reuse the half triangle. I can just cut the size smaller, as well as the sleeve. I can just cut that down. So how I'm going to make this into a jacket is I am going to omit the hemband and the sleeve band, and I am going to omit the neckband too. And I am going to cut a shape like this that rounds into the hem as well as into the neckline. So I'll have a nice open jacket, and I'm gonna bind these edges and as well as the sleeves and around the neck as well. So what I need is I'm just going to cut more half triangles. So for the front, I'll need 2 full triangles, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 half triangles. But I think I'll cut it in a hole as first, and then I'm gonna go in and shape it once it's already sewn together. So I can reuse my paper pattern pieces again, and I'm not actually cutting them out. So now it's the fun part. I get to choose which fabrics go in which panels. And what you can do is, since the triangles all work together, they're the same triangle, I'm going to just cut a bunch of triangles and then visually piece it together and pin it before I sew it. So let's get triangle cutting. So I have had fun and laid out a potential front or back. And the good thing about this is once I assemble 2 different variations, I can decide which I like better in the front, and then I can cut it down the middle, and then for the back, I can just leave it whole. So this is one potential grouping. And when you're grouping different fabrics, you want to visually see how they all work together. So you want at least 2 of some and a neutral, maybe you want to add in 1, but you don't want them two fabrics directly next to each other. So I just kind of played around here. And now that I can visualize this, I can determine what I want my sleeves to be. And I'm thinking this fabric right here for one of the sleeves, or I don't know. You know what, let's do both sleeves, this fabric, and then on the other piecing, I'll remain these in the center because we don't want them touching the sides because that'll flow into the sleeves. See, that idea just came to me. So I'll cut both sleeves in this fabric, but maybe I'll change the direction of the stripes for each sleeve. We'll see how much fabric I have and if I can do that. And you can totally crop the sleeve, and if you wanted a cuff for contrast, maybe that's what I'll do. I will cut another piece of fabric and have that cuff, depending on your fabric yardage, because you want to be able to have the longest sleeve possible with your little bits and pieces of fabric. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pin these together, sew them, and then sew all these together, and then I'll sew the top row to the bottom row. Maybe this will open me into the world of quilting. So I had to cut a little bit off my sleeve hem, but that is just another kind of happy accident because now I can incorporate a floral cuff onto my sleeve. So what I did is I just cut off that section so I knew what size of cuff I need. So I need 2 of them, and I'm gonna add some seam allowance on here as well. And then I can use this as my other pattern piece. And you can easily just tape this right back onto the sleeve pattern when you want your sleeve again. So now we have our pretty sleeve piecing. I'm just going to now just pin those right sides together. I want to do as much pinning as I can before I go to my sewing machine so I can just stay there and sew until I need to do a lot of pressing. I'm just gonna go ahead and arrange another variation for my back. All right, this looks good, so I'm gonna pin this together and then I'll meet you at the sewing machine because we have a lot of piecing to do. I'm excited, my first quilted jacket. I am so proud of myself. This turned out so nice. I feel like I'm actually quilting, but I'm so glad I can wear it, which I love, to spend my time on something I can wear. Now at this point, what we're going to do is we are going to back it with something a little plush. Now, since I'm a sewer, not a quilter, I just don't have batting on hand, but I do, of course, have lime green fleece. So I'm going to use this as my backing, and then it will also finish the inside, giving it a nice cozy feel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my piece right side up on my fleece. And that's why I didn't finish all my allowances, because I knew I was going to back it. Now before I cut it out, I'm just going to put a few pins in and draw about an inch border around, just so when I'm doing the free motion quilting, stitching them together, it gives me a little bit of room in case anything shifts and you don't want to be right on the edge. I'm just going to mark an inch around and then cut it out and get my machine into free motion sewing. I'm excited. to the sewing machine. Since I primarily use my machine for sewing and I'm wanting to experiment more with quilting for garments, I'm so glad that the Joy OS Advisor has this lovely quilting section. Lots of stuff like applique and piecing, which I referenced. And now I'm gonna go into free motion quilting. Now I'm gonna do the floating foot. Now what's really great is this machine has an foot called the R foot, then you can use that instead of the free motion foot if you don't have that. So here are all my supplies and I'm just gonna go into loading the stitch. And so right here it says the R foot, and let me get that installed here. Now I'm just trying out different patterns to see what I want to do. Oh, there we go. Ah! This is a good test, and I think I'm gonna grab my piece now. I'm nervous, but here we go. This is looking actually so cool. It's abstract. Well, that's a start. I just need to get some more bobbin thread in there and I'll finish it up. I have finished free motion quilting my front jacket piece, and I will say it's definitely abstract, but I love the effect. It kind of goes with the quirkiness of the jacket. I'm super excited. And I will disclose this was one of my first times actually free motioning on a garment instead of just a scrap, and I'm really proud of it. Since I want my jacket to open, I'm going to cut it down the center front. What I'm actually gonna do is just fold it just to make sure I'm truly getting down that center line. So I'm gonna match up these points. So I have my center here. The thing about free motion quilting is to just go for it. I just did swirly whirlies. I like to call them in what I was telling myself when I was doing them. But you could do any pattern that you like. You could do squiggles up and down. You could do little interesting shapes like a puzzle. So now I am going to line up my pin marks with, you want right down that center. So I might need to shift this over a bit so they all line up. And I'm just going to take out my pins so I'm not dulling my rotary cutter. Right in the center, and I'm going to cut right through. So now I have my two front pieces. So now, since I want to finish the front edges of my jacket going around the neckline as well as the hem with bias binding, I want a nice continuous piece. I am going to round these corners out. And what I'm going to do is actually put them together. So I'm creating the exact same curve on either side. And I'm gonna trim this away because the pattern already includes seam allowance within our side seams and our raglan sleeve attachment. I just want a slight curve, and you can even take a French curve ruler, but I'm just gonna eyeball it, just like I did with my stitching. Ta-da! Here are my jacket fronts. It's going to be so cute, a little cropped quilted jacket. So now I'm just going to trim my backing edges. And you could even baste along here, but I think the quilting stitches hold it in place enough. So now is also a fun part too. I can decide which color of binding that I want. I love this green. I think that brings a nice little pop, especially if I top stitch it in the white thread. It could really complement that stitching. Or I could go with a black binding. I'm not sure. But you don't want to attach the binding, which you'll just sandwich in and top stitch until you've sewn the backs and the sleeves to your garment, because you want it to be continuous going into the back hem as well as the back neckline. So I'm gonna go ahead and work on piecing and quilting my sleeves as well as my back. I really love how my jacket turned out, how I used a pattern that I already printed, sewed, and love how I could repurpose it for a completely different style. Love using a pattern more than one way. And I even learned and utilized a new skill. As a sewist, I sew garments, not quilts, but I kind of combined them here, and I loved using a new function on my sewing machine. It really opened my eyes to more possibilities that I can do. So head over to sewdaily.com to see how I finished my jacket, included piecing my back, quilting the sleeves, and putting it all together with the binding. Thanks for watching Style Revive on my quilted jacket.